Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another webinar. So, we have gone through one entire set of the webinars as of last Thursday. So, here we are on Tuesday, the 18th of February, and we're going to start from the beginning again and start off with tapping in part 1 out of 6. Why employ people with impairment? So, let's get into it. Sorry about the noise, just need to move the microphone. Okay, 30-foot Drop acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present. You must always remember that under the asphalt and tarmac and concrete, this land is, was and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. We'd also like to acknowledge the Department of Communities Disability Services for funding this and many other initiatives like it. Without their support, so many projects such as Two Wise Monkeys would never actually see the light of day, and as a community we would be much poorer for it. This workshop is part of the Realities and Advantages of Access and Inclusion Grant awarded to 30-foot Drop as part of the Information, Linkages and Capacity Building Grants of 2018 to 2019. Now, before we get into the information, okay, we have a little bit of housekeeping. So first up is, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to monitor all of our live streams during the sessions. So if you have any questions to ask or you want to interact with us, please head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live, okay? And there you'll find the chat functions. You'll also find the link just below my head. Now, look, we will be covering a lot of information, okay, and it's going to be in a short period of time. So we recommend that attendees take all actions they can to minimise distractions. And please, speaking of distractions, if you enjoy today, okay, if you enjoy our webinar, please jump onto social media, find us, follow us, give us a like, give us a review, give us a comment. All of these things really help to build our brand to make sure that we can get out there more. We'll also be recording this session and posting it on our social media channels along with the Vimeo library and the YouTube channel. So if you can't stay for this all or you want to go back and review any of the content that we've covered today, it will be there as of tomorrow morning. I should have it edited. We'll also be referencing research during our session today. All of the sources that we reference are available in the 30-foot Drop digital resource library. At the end of the webinar, we've got a short survey for attendees to complete. Please take the time to fill this out as it really helps us. Okay, it's 6 questions, 30 seconds. That's it. Okay, so please take the time to do that. All right, let me introduce myself. Whoops, and again, there we are. Okay, I am your wise monkey for this evening. My name is Ben. I am the Managing Director of 30-foot Drop, and I am see no evil. Now, see, I was C5 quadriplegic as of about 13 years ago. Now, I am see no evil because it's very obvious that I have an impairment. I mean, it's very hard to hide hands like this, okay, and the fact that I've got wheels attached to my butt. So that is why I am see no evil, because by the end of tonight, when you've taken in the information that we have about employing people with impairment, you will see that there is no evil about employing people with impairment. My co-presenter, Lisa, is actually hear no evil. Now, she'll be running some of the other webinars as we go, and I'm not going to ruin her story, but she has an invisible impairment. Okay, an invisible impairment is an impairment that you cannot easily see or notice. And in fact, it is to the point where people often have to tell you that they have an impairment before you realise it. And once again, with the information that you gain here today, you will hear no evil about employing people with impairment. But wait, isn't there normally 3 wise monkeys? Yeah. See no, hear no, speak no evil. Well, funnily enough, we do have a 3rd monkey here tonight, okay? And it's you guys. Hopefully, with what you learn here tonight, you will leave here speaking no evil about employing people with impairment. So, how are we going to get you started on the path of the wise monkey? You know, well, there's a lot to learn about employing people with impairment and the opportunities that they actually represent to your business. So, this is how we're going to do it. First up, we're going to examine some common myths, okay, and actually have a look at them and bust them and see whether they actually hold up in reality. Okay, after the little Mythbuster session, we're actually going to get down to brass tacks. Okay, and we're going to have a look at the subsidies available when employing someone with an impairment and how you can access them. And then after that, we're actually going to have a discussion about workplace modifications and how you can access the funding for these. To finish this all off, we'll do an open forum session where people will have an opportunity to ask me any questions that they want, and it can be any question. Okay. And how are we going to do this? Well, the answer is fun, experience, and open, honest discussion. Okay? 30-foot drop, we are all about educating the community through open, honest conversations. Feel free to ask any questions you have. There are none off limits. They don't have to be about the subjects we're covering tonight. Okay? Any questions? Good luck in offending me. Now, you will notice that there is very little written content on my slides, okay? That's because you're here to interact with me, okay? You're not here to just sit there and read what comes up on the screen. So, in order to facilitate this, I really encourage you to head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live, okay? So that way you can make use of the chat boxes, okay? Please, interact with us. It makes it a lot of fun, okay? I always look forward to it. Okay, now, before we get... Oh, sorry about that. Back spasm. Okay, before we get into tonight's information, I just want to actually discuss some terminology. Okay, this will actually reduce confusion and ensure understanding. Okay, so first up is looking at the difference between disability and impairment. Now, tonight you would have already heard me refer to people with impairment, where normally you would hear people say people with disability. That's because the word disability has actually been used incorrectly for a long time. Okay, so allow me to explain to you the difference between a disability and impairment. So I'll start off with an impairment. Okay, so an impairment is an injury, illness, or congenital condition that causes or is likely to cause a loss or difference of physiological or psychological function. In short, your impairment is your medical diagnosis, okay? My impairment is that I'm a C5 quadriplegic with post-traumatic stress in remission, okay? That is my impairment. That is how I am different to the normal. A disability, on the other hand, okay, is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in society on an equal level with others due to societal and environmental barriers. Okay, it is, as the word implies, think about it, disability, disable. Okay, it is something that makes you unable or disables you from being able to access or participate in an activity. Okay, so the impairment is how you differ from the norm in a medical term. Okay, a disability is the barriers that stop you from being able to participate. Hopefully that's made sense. If not, please head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live and chuck up any questions you've got there. Now, let's have a look at the second terminology that I like to examine, and that is the difference between access and inclusion. Okay, a lot of businesses think of access and inclusion as one big homogeneous lump, okay, that it describes one thing, but it's not. Access and inclusion are two completely different subjects and ways of approaching things. So, access refers to the removal or reduction of barriers, both physical and attitudinal, to the participation in the activities and functions of a community. Okay? At its core, access focuses a lot on the physical world around us, and it is easily assessed Okay, there are lots of Australian standards out there. There are lots of checklists. There are lots of resources that you can use to assess your accessibility. Okay, but being able to access a place is only one half of the equation. The other half of the equation is inclusion. Inclusion is more a psychological state of being. Okay, it's the process whereby everybody who wishes to can participate fully in all aspects of an activity or service in the same way as any other member of the community. Now, inclusion, okay, is not just talking about people with impairment. Inclusion, okay, when they talk about the process whereby every person, what they're saying is every person. So we're talking about people irrespective of age, impairment, gender, religion, sexual preference, or nationality. Okay? This is when everybody knows that their opinions, their thoughts, that they are valued, that they are part of the community, that they're not going to be ignored. Okay? So access is looking at the physical barriers. Inclusion is a lot about culture and psychology. As I've said before, if you've got any questions, please head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live, okay, and chuck your questions in there and we'll answer them as we go. But for now, that we've cleared up these little bits of terminology, let's get on with the main meat of tonight's webinar and have a look at the myths and realities that exist when employing people with impairment. Now, these myths, okay, they're not just some random, pardon me, wow, they're not just some random statements that have been plucked out of the air, okay? These are 7 reoccurring reasons for not employing people with impairment that have been brought up from studies around the world, okay? These are the results of surveys of employers the world around asking, well, why don't you employ people with impairment? Okay, and as you can see below there, okay, that is a list of the different research articles that I have pulled these myths from. Okay, so there's 7 of them. So let's have a closer look at them one by one. Myth number 1. People with impairments need expensive modifications in order to be a productive employee. That's the myth. The reality is that not everybody needs expensive modifications in order to be productive. Okay, impairments are like people. Every single one of them is unique. Okay, and not everybody with an impairment needs modifications. My advice is to ask any potential employees and find out. Okay. The next bit of the reality is that most of us already have the modifications that we need in order to be a productive employee. Okay, so for example, I will readily admit that getting adaptations for impairments is expensive. Okay, so I'm sitting in $20,000 worth of wheelchair right now. Having a car modified can cost $50,000 to $100,000 depending on your impairment. The thing is that I already own these things because I need them for day-to-day life anyway. Okay, if we want to look at something smaller, we got this thing. Okay, this is a reacher grabber. This allows me to pick things up off the ground. Okay, now it allows me to pick up all sorts of small things, whether it be paper or whether it be I used to use it to pick my baby up off the ground when he was very young. Okay, once again, I already had this when I started working. The employer did not need to buy it for me. Okay, most of the time people already have it. Now, if an employee with an impairment does need a modification, okay, there are often easy and inexpensive ways of going about it. So there is actually a good chance that this isn't the first time this particular barrier has been encountered. Okay, and the person with the impairment will know a workaround, will know a way around it. Okay, most of the barriers that occur in the workplace are barriers that we come up against on a daily. It's a daily occurrence. Okay. So, if you're unsure what modifications are required, ask. Okay. It's as simple as that. Now, lastly, okay, if an expensive modification is required, then there is actually funding assistance available through Job Access. We'll be covering that a little bit later when we look at workplace modifications. Okay, they are a great resource to tap into for workplace modifications and a real value add to your business. Okay, so in conclusion, people with impairment do not need expensive modifications in order to be a productive employee. Let's move on to myth 2. People with impairment are frequently absent from work. Look, this couldn't actually be further from the truth. And in fact, the opposite's actually true, okay? According to the Disability Investment Group, okay, in a study that they did called The Way Forward, a New Disability Policy Framework for Australia, 2009, 86% of employees with impairment had the same or superior attendance than other workers. Okay? 86%. That's amazing. Fewer sick days. Okay? Other studies also show that they have a reduced turnover rate. Okay? Meaning that they will stay with your business for longer. Less staff turnover means less onboarding costs. Okay? And onboarding costs are a killer in business. Okay? So, not only have you got somebody who's going to be there on average more than your other employees, but they're going to be there for longer. Okay, that sounds like an amazing employee. Now, why is this? Look, it's theorised it's because the unemployment rate for people with impairment is double that the rest of society. Okay, double. On top of that, it also takes on average twice as many job applications. Okay, twice as many job applications before landing a job. With one friend of mine applying for 183 positions before actually finally landing a job. Okay, now, my friend, she was not applying to be a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon or applying for something that was way out of her league. Okay, she had previous work experience, she had a good job history, and she was applying for entry-level jobs. Got turned down everywhere. Okay. So, due to the difficulty of gaining employment, okay, people with impairment, people like me, we view employment as a privilege, not a right, okay? And we'll go the extra mile to retain it. So, in summary, okay, people with impairment take fewer sick days, have the same or superior attendance rate, a reduced turnover rate, and they're loyal. 2 myths in, and they're already sounding like pretty good employees. Okay? Myth number 3. People with impairment are only suited to unskilled work. This is massively, massively untrue, okay? We are people like anybody else. We have such a range of talents, abilities, skills, okay? And this is backed up by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. In 2012, okay, they reported that, they did a survey of working age people with impairment who were employed and found the following, okay? Almost 20% of them work as professionals, okay? Just over 14% work as clerical administrative workers. Just over 15% work as technicians or trade workers. 11% run their own businesses, and about a third of them work from home. Okay? Such a wide, diverse spread of people. So in conclusion, people with impairment, depending on their skills and abilities, could be suitable for any role. Myth number 4. Excuse me, my paper seems to be stuck together. There we are. This is one of my favourites. My workers' compensation, okay, premiums and safety incidence rates will go up if I employ somebody with an impairment. Not true. Employing someone with impairment does not affect your premiums, okay? Insurance underwriters, when deciding your premium, look at your incidence history and workers' compensation numbers, okay? Not the number of people employed. They couldn't care about the number of people employed. Further to that, studies have shown that employees with impairment are up to 6 times less likely to have a work health and safety incident and are less likely to lodge workers' compensation claims. Okay? These reduced rates will actually have the opposite of what this myth was talking about. Okay? Reduced safety incidences, less workers' compensation rates means reduced premiums. Okay? Once again, it's theorised this is because the reason can be attributed to the difficulty many people with impairment have in finding employment. Okay, when it's so hard to find employment, you're not going to risk your job by flaunting the rules and cutting corners. Okay, so in conclusion, workers' compensation and safety incidences definitely do not go up. In fact, they're more than likely going to go down, which once again is going to save you, the business owner, money. Myth number 5, people with impairment are less productive employees. No, not true. Once again, the studies. There's research to back all of this up, okay? And in this case, the studies show that when matched to a position that suits their abilities, employees with impairment are just as productive as their counterparts, okay? Couple this with the reduced absenteeism, reduced work health and safety, and the reduced workers' compensation rates, and increased retention. Why aren't you already employing these people? Okay? On top of that, okay, there are some impairments out there that make their productivity significantly reduced. Okay? In these cases, people may consider the supported wage system. This is basically a system where people with impairment can access a reliable process of productivity-based wage assessment to determine fair pay for fair work. We'll go more deeply into it in the subsidies part of today's session. Myth number 6. Workers with impairment will not fit into my workplace. Not true. Okay? In most cases, in most workplaces, co-worker acceptance comes with awareness and observing that workers are competent and efficient at their jobs, regardless of impairment. Think about it. When a new co-worker starts up at your workplace, okay, the first thing that you're worried about is whether they can do the job. Because if they can't, it's going to mean more work for you cleaning up after them. Okay? So, that is where the acceptance offers come from. Add to this that people with impairment making up around 20% of the Australian population, and the likelihood of clients and co-workers having a relative or friend with impairment is high. Okay? And suddenly that becomes a callback, a point of difference. Which then leads into my last point with this myth. Okay? Studies show that employer initiatives in hiring people with impairment can have positive bottom line results, increase staff morale, and community recognition as good corporate citizens. Okay? Amazing, right? Positive bottom line results, increased staff morale. Okay, and on top of that, you get to tap into the ethical consumerism market. Okay, if you're not sure what I mean by ethical consumerism, please sign up for webinar number 3 out of 6. Okay, where we look at reasons why access and inclusion is worth your business's investment. So, in conclusion, myth 6, okay? The truth is that workers with impairment will fit into your workplace. The final myth, myth 7, okay? If they don't work out, I cannot discipline them or fire them. The reality is that this is not true, okay? Employing a person with impairment is the same as any other worker. You must establish clear performance expectations from the start, okay? If they are unable or unwilling to do the job, you can take further action as normal. There is no special laws in place there at all, okay? No special laws that prevent you from disciplining or terminating an employee who is unable or unwilling to do their job, okay? It is the same, the process is the same as any other employee. So I hope that those myths have given you some light bulb moments, because there is some amazing stuff in there. Now, before I move on to subsidies, for those who have joined late, I would really like to encourage you to head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live and follow the live event there, because the chat box there is the only one that I actually have the resources to monitor whilst I'm doing this. So if you have any questions that you want to ask me live, please head there, follow the live stream there, and hit me up with any questions. Okay, open, honest discussions is what we're about. All right, let's get into subsidies. So, when employing a person with impairment, there are various opportunities depending on the job seeker profile and their role hours. Okay. Now, these subsidies, they're all designed to offset training and other costs during your initial period. Okay, so during your onboarding period, more costs reduced. Now, these subsidies can be released in a lump sum or flexible payment. Now, there are some requirements. These are all contingent upon the award rate being paid for the role that they are doing. Okay, you need to make sure that you're paying the award rate, and that the minimum hours are being worked as per agreement. Now, as I go through and I talk about the minimum hours per week, okay, it is an average. Okay, it is an average over the timeline agreed. Okay, so for example, if the agreed timeline is 6 months, then it's an average of those hours per week over that 6 months. So you could, if it was 8 hours a week over 6 months, and you could only give them 16 hours a week for 3 months, there's a good chance that you can work that out. And the last thing is that they need to be registered with Disability Employment Services. Now, Disability Employment Services are an amazing resource for businesses to actually tap into when it comes to employing people with impairment. How amazing? Well, so amazing that they take up an entire section of the next webinar that we do. Okay, so if you want to learn more about Disability Employment Services, please log on tomorrow, and it will be Lisa running us through Disability Employment Service providers. Now, there are 4 basic options when it comes to the wage subsidies, or the subsidies available. Okay, so of these 4 options, these are only basic outlines that I'm giving you, and some further criteria may apply. If you have any more questions about them, either hit me up or get a hold of your local Disability Employment Service provider. Without further ado, let's have a close look at the subsidies. So the first one is called, very creatively, wage subsidy. Now, this is a $1,500 subsidy. Okay, now the requirements for it is that the employee must work at least 8 hours a week. Okay, as I said, that's an average of 8 hours per week over a minimum of 13 weeks duration. The catch is that when the job started, there has to have been an expectation of at least 13 weeks more work. Okay, so a potential 6-month position that didn't work out. Okay, and if it doesn't work out and the job has to end at 13 weeks, you still get paid out. Okay, so this is a nice, simple one, really easy, and $1,500 off your onboarding costs. Brilliant. Okay, on to the second one, wage start. So this one is starting to go up a little bit. Okay, so this one is $6,000. Okay, and the requirements. The employee has to be under the age of 50. And the employee has to have been a longer-term unemployed job seeker. Okay, so this is somebody who is actively looking for a job for the past year or 52 weeks or longer. Okay, that's how long they have to have been in active job search before they are eligible for this particular subsidy. Now, they need to be employed for at least 15 hours a week over a 26-week duration. Once again, that is a 15 hours per week average. Okay, so those businesses out there that can only do casual work, and you can't guarantee how much, but you're pretty sure you can average 15 hours a week over 26 weeks? Perfect. The third subsidy is called Restart. $10,000. Okay, now this one, the requirements are a little bit different. Okay, so the employee has to be over the age of 50 at the time of employment, and they need to be a longer term unemployed job seeker. Okay? Similar to the last one, where they have to have been in active job search for at least 52 weeks or longer. Okay? And lastly, they need to be employed for at least 20 hours per week, over 26 weeks. Okay, so those are your three basic wage subsidies, or your basic employment subsidies available when you employ people with impairment. The final one is the one that I hinted at earlier, which is the supported wage system. Now, this particular subsidy, it's a little bit more complicated, but in short, it revolves around the concept of fair pay for fair work. So it allows candidates who cannot perform all job requirements to receive a productivity-based wage, so as not to disadvantage the employer financially. An assessment determines the gap, between the actual and required or standard performance due to a worker's health condition or impairment, and the percentage of hourly rate payable. Okay, so this basically allows people with a severe impairment to work without disadvantaging the employer. Now, I will point out that the assessment itself is independently done. Okay, they are amazing people and they do a great job at assessing this. So, as an example of this, okay, say it is determined that someone with an impairment is producing work at 70% of the requirements. Okay, so they're working at about 70% productivity. That would mean that the employer would pay that person at 70% of the applicable reward rate. Okay? Simple, yeah? So, how can employers access these subsidies? They sound amazing. Hopefully I'm selling you guys and employing people with impairment. We've gone through the 7 myths and we've found out that people with impairment make amazing employees who turn up to work more often, who take less sick days, who cause less safety incidences, who make less workers' compensation claims, who will help increase your bottom line, staff morale, all of these things. And on top of that, you can get subsidies to reduce the onboarding cost. Oh my God, so how can you access these? Look, you need to contact your local disability employment service, okay? If you're keen to jump straight into it, jump onto Google, put in disability employment service and then your area, and it'll come up with a list of them. Now, if you want to know more about the disability employment service providers and what their roles are and some of the resources that they offer, we'll be covering it in the next webinar. So log on tomorrow and have a listen. These guys are amazing and are a real value add to your business. Okay, so that is subsidies done. Once again, I really encourage you guys, okay, if you've got any questions, please jump onto www.30footdrop.com.au/live to ask me any questions that you have, okay? I love interacting with you guys. It makes the time fly so fast and also makes sure that everybody understands the information that I'm putting down, okay? Because this is information which is essential for employers. All right, on to the last part. We are looking at workplace modifications. Now, in Australia, you cannot talk about workplace modifications as far as impairments go without talking about job access. So what is job access? Job access is the national hub for workplace and employment information for people with impairment, employers and service providers. Okay, it is fully funded by the Employment Assistance Fund, a part of the government. Okay, and they offer financial assistance for workplace modifications that assist people with an impairment to gain meaningful, lasting employment. Okay, this is yet another value add of why it is a great idea to employ people with impairment. So, what do I mean when I say workplace modifications? What can this funding be used for? Okay, so the first thing it can be used for is the cost of making adjustments to the physical workplace. Okay, if you need to put in a new door that's easier to open, if you have to move some of the cubicles around, if you have to adjust desks, all of those physical workplace modifications you can actually get funded by Job Access. You can also get modifications to work vehicles for people who, if the job involves driving a lot, basically, Job Access can help you to modify those vehicles. So a lot of those expensive costs that I was talking about before, they can often be covered by this. They'll also cover the cost of any special equipment required for the workplace. Okay, for example, I use a trackball mouse because with these hands, using a normal slide around mouse is damn near impossible. Job access will cover the cost of those. Okay, special equipment that I require as a result of my impairment. Many other examples out there. They'll also help fund any information and communication devices required. Okay, if you have somebody who has quite a severe sight impairment who requires a screen reader in order to be able to access any documents. If you've got somebody who requires Braille, a Braille information board, for example, all of these things can be supplied by Job Access, or the funding for these things can be supplied by Job Access. They will also help with the cost of Auslan interpretive services that involve the person with impairment. Okay, they've got a little bit more on that in a second. They'll also help with the cost of specialist services for employees with specific learning disorders and mental health conditions. Okay, there are some impairments out there that make it a lot harder for people to learn, and they require certain supports or certain assistance in order to be able to take in the information. Okay, Job Access can help with the cost of these services. They'll also help with disability awareness training. Now, this is for the workplace, including deafness awareness, mental health awareness, and first aid training. Okay, this is, actually I'll tell you more about it later, but basically it is about getting your workplace and the people who work there ready for their new co-worker to give them confidence when it comes to interacting with this new employee who is amazing. So, how do you go about accessing these workplace modification subsidies? Okay, now, as a note before I start on how you can do it yourself, most disability employment services will actually facilitate and arrange any assessments that are required. So if your employee is already going through a disability employment service, talk to them about accessing workplace modifications. But if you wish to go it alone, it's quite easy. So first of all, you need to submit the application to the Employment Assistance Fund. Now this can be found on the Job Access website, and it's a very easy to follow form. Okay, they've done an amazing job in filling it out and making it easy to use. There is also assistance available if you get stuck. Okay, they are an awesome team. They know what they're talking about. Really make it so easy. Okay, so it'll go into the Employment Assistance Fund and then get funneled to Job Access. Now, Job Access will assess the application, and from there, they will decide whether it's successful or not. Now, they do this because, let's face it, some people can get pretty cheeky when it comes to this sort of thing. But if it is successful, okay, Job Access will advise you whether or not a workplace assessment is required. Okay, now, if a workplace assessment is not required, now this is mostly in the case of small adjustments or small things like the mouse I was talking about earlier that I use. These are small amounts, they're easy to do, okay? So if it's not required, then the workplace purchases the goods or services and then gets reimbursed by Job Access, okay? Easy. If an assessment is required, okay, Job Access will actually arrange a specialist to confirm the workplace changes are necessary. Now, this is an amazing value add, okay? Because you are getting access to a specialist that would normally cost you a lot in call-out fees to get. So, depending on who it is calling out there, if you have any other questions around the workplace that relates to it, make sure you have them ready. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they're happy to answer any other questions that come their way. Okay? And then after the assessment, if the specialist actually says, yes, this definitely is required, then the workplace, once again, will purchase the goods and services and get reimbursed by Job Access. Easy peasy peasy. Funding caps. Now, like all government subsidies and funds, there are, of course, limits to what you can access. Okay? But if you ask me, they're actually very generous in what they do offer. So first of all, physical workplace adjustments. Okay? They are capped at $30,000. Now, $30,000 may not pay for a new lift so that your employee can get upstairs, and you or the business owner will probably have to pitch in as well. But what a lot of people miss out on is the value add that comes with the builders and the carpenters and all of those people coming in to do the work. Normally when they come in to do work, okay, they will charge a call-out fee. Now, you're already getting work done anyway. So whilst you're getting a quote done for the new modification, whatever it happens to be, make sure that you get them to quote for anything else that needs to be done at the same time. Now, you'll still have to pay for these, but you will not have to pay for the call-out fee again. Okay? Value add. The next cap is around Auslan. Okay, there are 3 levels of Auslan, and I'm just going to go through them quickly. So Auslan Level 1 interpreting is for work-related activities for employees who are deaf or have hearing impairment, including remote interpreting and real-time captioning. Okay, this is capped at $6,000 for every 12 months per employee with a hearing impairment who uses Auslan as their primary method of communication. Big mouthful, okay? But this allows for easy communication within the workplace. Okay? Auslan Level 2 interpreting is for job interviews and related activities such as site visits, completion of tests and information sessions for people who are deaf or have hearing impairments. Okay? The funding for this is uncapped. So if somebody with a hearing impairment who requires Auslan turns up for a job interview or puts in for a job interview and you find out their requirements, okay, it's not going to cost you anything. Apply to Job Access for it. Give them an equal go because, hell, I've already gone through all of the advantages so far. Okay, this is just another one. Having somebody who uses Auslan within your workplace is amazing. Okay, especially when you take into the Auslan Level 3. Auslan Level 3 interpreting is to help co-workers receive training, in this case Certificate to an Auslan, to communicate with employees who are deaf or have a hearing impairment and who use Auslan as their main method of communication. This is capped at $855 per year. Now, this is one of the biggest value adds here, okay? Because not only are you gaining an amazing employee, as I said before, but also you can train other employees within the system to learn basic Auslan. How is that a value add? Well, suddenly you become a niche place where people who rely on Auslan can come in and communicate directly to your employees rather than relying on interpreters. Pretty amazing, okay? And if you want to know more about these sort of value adds and these niche markets, okay, part 3 and part 4 of the tapping in, we focus a lot on why it's worth your investment and how you can go about investing in it. So that's Auslan Level 3. The last one is disability awareness training, okay? If you employ a person with a disability, you can apply for funding for disability awareness training for the workplace, okay? Now, this is capped at $1,500 for each employee with a disability, with an impairment within a 12-month period. Another great value add, okay? So this training is aimed at making your employees comfortable with their new workmate, okay? So the trainer will go through how, methods of communication, what to look for, all of the real basics to help people feel comfortable with their new employee. Now, most people who provide this training, of which 30 Foot Drop's one of them, okay, we will also cover basic awareness training, okay? This is a value add because this basic awareness training that we do as well, because we find that if we just offer the really advanced stuff to do with one specific impairment, then it often gets lost in translation. Okay, there's a lot of information that needs to be covered beforehand. Suddenly, your employees will be more comfortable with interacting with all people with impairments because they've had the training. Okay, what a value add. Suddenly, you've gone one step closer to being a more inclusive business. Pretty amazing. So, that covers workplace modifications and all of the information that we have for tonight. So what we're going to do is, in a moment, we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A time. But before that, if you need to go, please head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay, there you will find the surveys, post-webinar surveys. Now, these are really short surveys, 6 questions, 30 seconds. Please go on there and do them. They really help us. If you've enjoyed tonight, give us a like, give us a share, tag someone in who you think could really benefit from this. Okay? If you need to go, have a good night. If you don't need to go and you've got questions, once again, head over to the website, use the chat box there, okay, and ask me any questions that you have. I will give you guys until 6:50 to ask any questions you have. Yeah, so 5 minutes. Log on over, and I will hopefully be answering your questions soon. we're back. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have not received any questions. Oh, well, look, really enjoyed answering people's questions. Hey, I hope you guys have enjoyed tonight. If you have, please jump on social media, give us a like, give us a review, give us a comment. All of these things help. Share this with people that you think it would help, or who needs to know this information, because at the end of the day, there's money out there to be made. You just need to know where to look. And hey, these webinars, they're a bit of a treasure map. So look after yourselves, look after each other, and catch you next time.